work organization and its effect on work satisfaction and motivation. Work satisfaction, motivation, the core of work, the experience of stimulation and self-actualization in work tasks and activities is the eighth determinant area regarding whether people can and want to work, and is part of the fourth determinant sphere for a sustainable working life for all ages. Through utilizing human resources in the best possible way, the organizational productivity is assumed to increase. The meaning of effective organization in work was detected early on, both in the farming society and at war. Adam Smith introduced the division of labor during the 18th to 19th century, with increased mechanization in factories in the UK. For example, textile workers would, instead of working and weaving fabrics from home, move and work in large factories in the city. In this way, the effectiveness of work increased. Research and more conscious strategies to organize work began to emerge in the end of the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century, when working in industries was more common than working in agriculture. The organization of work was a hot topic, and the organization was to be based on research. Frederick Taylor began to conduct time studies in 1881 and developed scientific management. In Sweden, time studies were instilled significantly in the 1950s with the rationalization movement. Employees conducting time studies and controllers were recruited to ensure that the right employee executed the right work tasks and didn't waste valuable working hours doing other things. Controllers examined the quality and the time it took to execute the different work tasks. The employees were subsequently organized according to the principle of the right employee in the right place. In other words, whoever was the best at executing a certain task would spend all their time doing this particular task. The organization of work was only to be conducted by foremen and managers, who were considered the best at this particular task. Top-down leadership means that the managers in detail decided on what tasks should be executed and in what way. The organization was managed from the top, and the employees were not supposed to think, but rather only execute their assigned work tasks. The individual employees lacked overview of the organization. They were alienated and shielded from what their individual work contributed to in the end product, as well as how the work was connected to society and the development in general. No one needed to take responsibility for more than executing their assigned work tasks. In this way, the employees in the organization were easily managed. However, it also took the moral responsibility away from the individuals and increased the tendency to make individuals take on and execute less ethically responsible work tasks. During the 1920s and 1930s, other views of the organization of work emerged. The human relations theory of management had a perspective of industrial organizational psychology and was critical of the Tayloristic view of the human as a machine. The Hawthorne experiments, conducted in the Western Electric factory outside Chicago, concluded that people have an inherent ability and driving force to feel work satisfaction as well as to learn and develop. People's need of acknowledgement, security, and a sense of coherence are more important to productivity, work ethics, and motivation than the physical conditions of the workplace. Informal groups in the workplace influence and control the productivity and attitudes towards work of the individual employee through social control. The thoughts introduced with the human relations theory of management paved the way for human relations departments at enterprises in the 1940s and 1950s, today commonly abbreviated to HR. The development of work organization moved towards flatter organizations. The clear hierarchy disappeared and was replaced with flatter organizations. Employees were supposed to be self-monitoring and work according to mutual values and norms. The role of the manager became more supportive rather than controlling and monitoring details. Group dynamics became important, as well as self-monitoring teams. Psychologist Abraham Maslow introduced a model of human needs called the hierarchy of needs. Maslow meant that we need to cover these needs one step at a time and only can move on to the next step when the basic needs are fulfilled. The 5 steps are described as basic physical needs such as food, rest, and sleep. To experience safety, security, and protection. Social needs with community, intimacy, friends, and colleagues. Acknowledgement and having an identity of one's own. And the last step is reaching self-actualization and achieving one's full potential. Social systems, leadership, and relations became more significant in the organizations. The American psychologist Abraham Maslow was the first to organize a hierarchy of human needs in 1954. He described that individuals have a need for personal development and the organization should support the employees' personal development, which contributes to improving their work efforts. Frederick Hertzberg described different factors of motivation and hygiene in the work situation in his motivation hygiene theory from 1968. He described that dissatisfaction and ill health were connected to the physical working conditions, salary, and status, and called these hygiene factors. But in order for employees to experience motivation, they need to be completed with other factors such as acknowledgement, responsibility, and the opportunity of development in work. Sociotechnical theory was developed at the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. It focused on the work level, emanated from work, the organization, and the technical system, and aimed to create larger structural changes in the work organization with analysis of both the social and technical system. Productivity increased when employees themselves created a work organization based on their occupational roles and job rotation, as well as managing work through autonomous work teams. The recessions of the 90s and 2000s made outsourcing a more attractive option for enterprises and organizations, as well as downsizing to smaller organizations. Organizational models borrowed from Japan and the US were introduced. For example, just in time. In other words, to produce and deliver just in time in order to decrease expenses for interest and delayed income. An active production without expenses for stock keeping through production when orders came in and only for ongoing workflow. Work steps were standardized and rotation between work tasks decreased. Another example of a popular organizational model from this time is lean production, or Toyota production system, which was developed in the Japanese Toyota factories. The idea is to identify and eliminate waste from the organization in order to become more effective and streamline production. Above all, this concerns the following areas: overproduction, unnecessary weight, unnecessary transport, unnecessary steps for processing or reprocessing, stock keeping, unnecessary movement, to decrease inspection and reparation. These ideas can be valuable in a short-term perspective in order to eliminate waste from the production. However, critics claim that this new way of perceiving the human as a machine that is part of the production is much like in Taylorism. Furthermore, critics claim that this organizational model is harmful to the psychosocial work environment. A modern organizational model within public sector is called New Public Management, which is an organizational model inspired by the private sector. The basic idea is to provide more flexible forms of employment, and that all employees should know the goals of the organization. In order to reach the goals of the organization, the idea is to manage the organization and motivate employees through management by objectives and a management that should provide a strict and clear division of responsibility. This is supposed to be achieved through decentralization, the division of the public sector into smaller units, streamlining through renting services from inside and outside the public sector, competition, which means more competition within the public sector, cost efficiency, and economical use of resources, and utilize means in a better way, through explicit standards, with aims, success indicators, and measurable objectives, and a focus on actual results and reward connected to execution, which means that the results will be more important than the procedure. The critique of new public management revolves around it not being possible to apply production models in organizations that primarily work with people and care. People are not objects, and there's a need of a larger flexibility in organizations that work with people. Or else, it may cause problems, since people are emotional and not rational. This may cause the duration of the different steps to vary and demand more or other resources than expected. When the work doesn't follow the plan or work schedule, the employees in these occupations, as well as the patients or clients, are likely to experience stress and frustration, like being a round peg forced into a square hole. It's important for the individual employee to experience well-being in their work environment. Furthermore, it's important for the organization or enterprise that the employees experience this, since it gives people better conditions to stay healthy, be more productive with a higher quality. Therefore, many organizations and enterprises are interested in creating a health-promotive work environment. Rubenowitz describes 5 factors of importance in a health-promotive work environment, and these are self-control in work, positive work management and work climate, stimulation in the actual work, a good working community, and an appropriate workload. Please take a few moments to consider and reflect on the following questions. What organizational model dominates in your workplace? Does this organizational model contribute to employees' experience of the work as stimulating and motivating, and to execute the work tasks and activities? What motivates and stimulates you in your occupation? What increases or would increase your own motivation for your work tasks? What influences or would increase the effect of the work tasks on the wish for you to work until an older age?